Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Abbie Richie. I'm the host of the show, and you can find me here every Tuesday talking with people who are engaged in age tech in the senior living space. Before we bring our guest on, let's go ahead and run our intro. I am thrilled to say that today's show is brought to you by Fynn. Master the art and science of successful senior living with Fynn's comprehensive senior living platform. Learn more about Fynn at fynn.io. That's Fynn.io. And now I want to go ahead and introduce my guest today, Brenda Connelly. Come on board to Tech Tuesday. Hey.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you too. Thank you so much for being my guest today. Brenda is the president of the Springs Living. And Brenda, would you please go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm Brenda Connelly. I've been the president of the Springs Living. I've been with the company now for about 12 and a half years. Started in senior living in particular, as well as with the Springs as an executive director, and served in a variety of roles with the Springs over the course of that time. Prior to that, I was with skilled nursing. And I started there at the age of 16. So long-term care and serving older adults is pretty much all I've ever known. So hopefully I can offer some insight into how we use technology for your listeners today.
100%. Wow. So you've been entrenched in pretty much every role. And so how have you seen technology evolve from day one to now?
Well, it's interesting because I talk to my kids about the world before cell phones, and they don't understand that we didn't always have cell phones and other technology. And that's the same in healthcare. I worked in healthcare back before we heavily leveraged technology too. And certainly we know the major adjustment that's been over the course of the last, say, 10, 15 years. And, I think the biggest hurdles that I saw in getting into it was just the overall adoption of especially frontline staff. And, being able to get people on board with a different way of doing things, that change management cycle is never easy. But ultimately, as technology and features and integration and all of that has grown, I think it's really illuminated how technology can really assist us with doing our jobs in our communities and across more of an enterprise operation as well.
Yeah, 100%. You kind of just brought me back to my early days when I was working at ABC Channel 7 in San Francisco. And at that time, and so that was like the year 2000. Even before that, I think it was even earlier than that. And I was trying to talk to them about getting a website. And so the adoption for just getting a website, was unbelievable. And yeah, how much that has grown. And not only that, but within the past 2 years, adoption is just something that we have had to do, right?
Absolutely. Well, because we've had no other option. Technology has had to fill some gaps for us due to, whether it's all the reporting and compliance that we've had to do in our industry throughout COVID, or just simply with the workforce challenges that we faced. And I know there's other companies out there who have leveraged technology even to fill some gaps on the workforce side. We have robots in our dining rooms, and that's a clear example of technology put into motion in the last couple of years that was out of necessity, but truly filled a void. And, if you would have asked me 15, 20 years ago if we would have had robots in our dining rooms helping us, I would have laughed at you. But here we are, and it's been very successful.
Yeah, so let's talk about that robot, the dining robot, for instance. It's something that's been becoming more and more, people are becoming more comfortable with it. The residents like it. They like it in their dining room. They like that it can help the staff. How did this work for your communities? Who was the first person who brought this concept to you?
Well, our director of culinary service, Sam Curry, at our home office had been doing some research because just like everyone else, we had some shortages in our server team, and ultimately we're 24/7, 365. We never close. And so we don't have an option but to find a way to solve problems. And sometimes technology does that. So we happened to see it. I think it was even on LinkedIn, and an ad for it, and decided to give them a call. But they were primarily in restaurants at the time. And we thought, well, gosh, look, everything else we've tried hasn't come to fruition. Let's give this one a try. And sometimes with technology, you really do have to be willing to just take a risk because it's not always proven. And I recognize that we were early adopters in 2 years ago, moving forward with that. And we got one community on board and figured out what the challenges were, which I think is key to technology adoption. Starting small, not doing a pervasive rollout of anything, really working the kinks out so that then you have buy-in and consensus before going more broadly, with either a larger team or multiple communities.
Yeah, I think that the consensus is great. Now, I wanted to tell you guys, if you happen to hear some background noise, just so you know, like a half hour before I was going to go live, we had a power outage in the neighborhood. So I went to 3 places, and actually I'm at the lovely Marriott Mayo here, and it was the quietest of them all. But I do apologize if you do hear noise because I'm in a public area today. So just wanted to let you know that. Brenda, when I saw you speaking on a panel at ASHA, and a lot of people were talking about this hospitality aspect of senior living, right? And I think that's something that, if you're not in senior living, you don't realize that the community is open 24/7, and the impact that that takes on staffing is enormous. So anytime you can offset that with technology, and of course it's not going to replace a person, but it's going to aid someone in doing their job better, right?
Absolutely. Because it is 24/7, 365, and we have different shifts, that we're having to have communicate. And we have various things that need to be communicated across departments. It has to be well integrated. And our technology helps us do that. Just like if you think about every one of our departments, we have dining, we have health services, we have, life enrichment, administration. And if every single one did their jobs and only their jobs, we would have a very disconnected approach to how we serve our residents. And that's exactly the same in the technology that we leverage in each one of those areas. They also have to connect. And the only way to do that is to have technology that really puts the resident at the center. Because ultimately, we're all here to provide service and hospitality around the care and service of that resident. And so if any technology doesn't put the resident at the center and then have everything communicating together in service of that, it's probably not the right fit. So that's one of our core principles when we choose to decide to go forward with something for our communities.
Oh, I love it. That makes total sense because that's a great benchmark, right? Like right away, is it going to serve our residents? If it doesn't, then we need to move on from it. Like I heard you say something just a little while ago about how you had tried different things, but they didn't work. And yes, as an entrepreneur, you have to throw a lot at the wall and see what is going to work. And so what else is working in your communities right now, along with the dining robot?
Oh, well, we've had great success with partnering with our vendors in technology space. And, that's one thing that I would say as far as who you're selecting to work with. It's more important actually that you choose the right vendor partner than it is actually the product that you're selecting, because it has to be a good mutual fit. It's like a courtship to make sure that it's a good fit. But ultimately, what we've had great success in is being able to give feedback to our vendor partners on how to really enhance the user experience and make sure that it works well for our frontline staff. One of the things that is working really well is we use Point Click Care's Care Companion app, and we've been using that since we first started with them a number of years ago. And our staff really appreciate being able to communicate real-time feedback to the people that develop and update the care plan. That way they're assured that information flows seamlessly to the people that need to know it. Whereas, back when I was a caregiver, sometimes I felt like I was communicating with two soup cans and a string for how effective that communication occurred. But being able to see truly how much care does that resident need today. If I'm a brand new person starting, I need that information at my fingertips in an easy to use mechanism, and then to communicate changes as well. And so I've appreciated that. That's certainly working very well. The other thing I'll say is I appreciate that we're at the early stages of technology vendor partners working together, recognizing that nobody has to be the one-stop shop. I know there's a few that are trying to be, but I'll be honest, from my opinion, I've rarely seen that there's one option that really suits everything we need. And so that integration, that seamless integration is so key to us as operators. And I've seen some evidence of that within, how some of the partners are working together. And those that listen and really accept that feedback are the ones that win out with us.
Right, 100%, because it's not just getting the technology in, it is the updates, it's the integration, it's the application and the training on it. So, anytime someone tells me, whether it's a vendor or some, I'm researching a new piece of technology, oh, it's so plug and play. I'm like, oh no, it is not plug and play. It's never like that. So yeah, I I do appreciate that for sure. There was something else I was going to ask you. Do you have a committee on your staff or at different communities that proposes these various technology concepts?
Well, we have a company culture that at its core really strives to be innovative and try new things. And so I think it's just inherent that people will bring forward, whether they go to a conference or they have exposure to a technology from a different company they worked at, we're very open to hearing that feedback and then evaluating it. So we have a team of people that comes together around any technology decision that we make. And we really identify through a checklist of the various things that we need to have it hit for each respective area in order for it to work well for us. And, we certainly have learned a lot of lessons along the way and have grown that list of must-haves versus nice-to-haves. And I think it really helps set it up for success versus not. Because I'll tell you, Abbie, there's so many shiny objects out there with regards to technology. And I think if we're just chasing after the latest and greatest feature, something that might seem like it's going to move the needle or that it's an easy button, it takes such due diligence to make these decisions and assure that it's going to work well within your organization and that your infrastructure is set up for success. And so having that group come together, that, multifaceted group of people that come at it from all different angles, assures you have a greater deal of success with any implementation. Oh, you're muted.
On a truly practical level, how frequently do you come together? Could you hear me okay? I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah. How frequently do we come together?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't necessarily have a regular cadence. Certainly, if we're in the process of, within our strategic plan, we do annual strategic planning, which also encompasses what technologies are we looking to either grow and strengthen this year, or are we looking to replace something in the next year to 2 years? And having that on our strategic plan is really important because then we know to allocate what resources and what have you. So certainly leading up to that decision, there's a regular cadence of discussions, whether it's, every other week to, once a quarter, depending on how far out in the decision we are. But then after the implementation becomes just as important, and making sure that we're keeping the team together to talk through bugs, because there will always be bugs, and assuring that you're really working with the product team, the implementation team, to make sure that it gets to that place where you truly think it's ready to fly on its own without sort of a team that's overseeing it. But we always come together at least on an annual basis. And then as we're reviewing our strategic plan, throughout the year, as far as our progress, sometimes things get reevaluated. And so then that team will be pulled back together to review alternate technology options. We are pretty nimble as an organization, and if we see something that comes up that we know we absolutely need to have, and it may need to be reprioritized over another initiative. And I think we have to be nimble like that, especially when we see that it could really enhance operations. And I think the robots are a great example of that. We had nothing even close to that being discussed as far as our technology team was concerned, but we saw an opportunity and we grabbed onto it because we knew it could make a real difference.
Yes, absolutely. So there was something else I wanted to ask you about being nimble. So especially in the past couple of years, going into COVID, what were the things that you were like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that we have that in place? And then what were the things that you felt like, oh boy, we got to work on this?
Well, let's see. I'm sure like everyone, it was communication on steroids, throughout all that, especially with internally as our needs were changing to communicate, changing precautions and information around the virus itself and, what we need to do and things like that, but also out to residents and family members and assure that the communication is aligned. And what I really appreciated going into COVID was that it was great. It was great timing, but we had a communications director in place who actually had taken steps towards putting technology, whether through Constant Contact or we have it actually, we call it our Team Springs app, but it's through staff base. It's an internal app that helps us communicate to everyone in real time what's occurring, precautions that are changing, updates, even sometimes, because we had some dark times, some praise and motivation to get out to everybody. So I appreciate that we had that. Certainly just having the depth of information that we had available to us within our intranet with real-time updates to those policies and procedures and precautions that were in place, flyers, all of that being available at the fingertips as soon as we made an edit was really important as well. And fortunately, we did have that at the time. And in addition, just having electronic health records and being able to extract information, we did a lot of testing. We had to pull a lot of lists for resident and family contacts, all of that, and everything was available at our fingertips to be able to make it happen quickly. There's things that we've learned through this that we've continued to grow and evolve over the last few years that we know going into whatever comes next. I hate to even say that out loud, but I think all of us are much more prepared, and that's how it should be.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, I want to talk about the operator, okay? And because as the president, Brenda, you've got it together. Like, it's clear to me, like, there's so much infrastructure and communication that's happening. What would you say to the operator who's like wearing a ton of hats and not sure exactly where to start and yet feels those pressures? What would you say to them?
With regards to technology?
Mm-hmm.
Because that could be a huge question, Abbie. What would I say to them? I think ultimately, often, at least how I feel, is that I get recruited and pinged all the time for different options. Like I said, these shiny objects of things that are just going to, save me time, help me spend more time with my residents, create greater clarity around what's happening. There is no easy button to any of this. And I guess what I would recommend with any decision that you're going into with regards to technology is, first and foremost, you have to understand what problem you're trying to solve. We don't just go for technology because it's something that's neat and fun and innovative and let's try it. We truly have to have a need. And we also believe within our organization that it's important for us to have a manual way of doing it first that's successful before we think that technology is going to come in and just take the place of it. I think that aligns expectations a little bit. And along with that, we are so open to network with others in the professional space on what's working and what's not. I would really encourage operators to reach out to other operators that are, when you do full reference checks as a part of your due diligence. If you're working with a new CRM or a new healthcare platform, reach out and ask for references and truly make those calls, and really do your due diligence, because you're going to hear the good, bad, and the ugly. And we're always open to sharing. And I like to get an operator's perspective of, okay, this is what they told me it does, and this is what it actually does. How well does it integrate between, how does the interface work? What are the actual fields that you'll find transfer over when they say you just push a button and it goes over there? It's not an easy button, so let's make sure it actually works. And so the other side of that is we have to be sure that we have the capacity to take on any change in technology, whether you're adding something new or switching, to something to replace it. It takes a lot of resources, not just financial resources for setup and implementation. It takes a lot of resources for staff time. And you can't underestimate how important that implementation team is. We call them, the software champions in our company, to be able to really own it and see it through to the finish line. And if you're not able to make that investment, it's probably best to hold off.
Great advice. Thank you. What are some things that you're excited about, you're looking at implementing and bringing into your communities right now?
Well, there's a couple of things. The first thing I'll say is that we're building currently a 12-story high-rise on the Vancouver, Washington waterfront. And this community for us represents a different style of operations. And we're really hoping to leverage technology to help us stay even better connected. So with that, for the first time, we are going to go forward with RTLS, or real-time location sensing. And it's not so much about the residents. I think a lot of people think about RTLS and being able to track resident movement. I'm less concerned about that. Labor is the biggest driver of expense in our communities, and being able to understand how staff move through those 12 stories in the most efficient and effective way. Imagine having a roadmap as a new staff member to know the very best caregiver on your team. How does she or he move through their day to be the most efficient and effective as possible, meeting those residents' needs? So RTLS is going to be able to really sense the motion and movement to understand how to optimize and create efficient, labor pools, and also be able to provide that pathway for new staff who are joining, because that's also an enormous undertaking. So I'm very excited about that. The other thing I'll say is I love what I'm seeing with technology in the machine learning, the artificial intelligence. They're creeping into our space a bit more. And we have to be able to have machine learning that actually is taking advantage of the depths of data that we have available to us in all of our systems, and actually converting that into real-time intelligence for us so we can drive better decision making. We only have so much time. We need to have technology helping us to augment that time and help us to make better decisions based on what's occurred. And as we're all reaching for how to provide the very best quality in our communities and service to our residents, as well as to attract and retain the very best staff, we have to understand what didn't work or help to make sure that we're using technology to drive decision-making and forecasting what's going to happen in the future. A classic example of that is we partnered with a company called Winterlight, who actually evaluated 3 years worth of our care plans and assessments that we completed. And with 90+% accuracy, we're able to predict whether someone was going to have a fall in the future 3 months. Now, imagine the impact of that. If we can turn that into real-time support, it takes our risk assessment and puts it on steroids, especially in this day and age when, having licensed nurses is really a premium in our space, as we've had dwindling workforce availability in that area in senior living.
Oh my goodness. If I was watching this right now as a participant, I would be just like throwing up all those hearts over and over and over again. You know how people give you those hearts, or they give you the thumbs up, because everything that you've said has just been like gem after gem after gem. And so if you're watching this right now and you're getting value from this, go ahead and put that in the comments, because I got to tell you, I have loved hearing your perspective when it comes to the operator, and I've loved hearing about how you're using this data, not only, to, of course, track the residents and know how they're doing, but also in training staff and modeling other caregiver behavior. Love it, love it, love it. I love it when it like goes across many different departments and uses in that way. Love it.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm sorry, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, I guess just really in closing, I'm really excited about how quickly technology evolves and advances. It's so much quicker than any other aspect of what we do in our industry, the way technology is evolving. If you look at the growth in the last 5 years, I can't help but be on the edge of my seat waiting for what the future 5 years are going to hold. And I would just encourage everyone who's involved with senior living, who uses technology or really wants to, really dive in and let's push this forward to build technology platforms that are going to enhance the work we do, help us provide better quality. We need everybody to participate and support. It can't just be vendors coming to the table with all their ideas. There has to be that partnership together. And certainly on the capital side, we're going to need the investment because you can't do all of this without that investment. So really, really excited about the future.
Now, is there anything in particular, I'm just curious, that you think is missing that we need right now in senior living when it comes to technology?
Well, to me, the most important thing that I see is missing is the depth of integration that needs to be able to occur. We still operate in a very siloed approach with regards to each of the technology systems that are out there. And while they generally will say, we have an open API, we'll work with anybody, don't worry. It's very limited what that integration actually looks like and how much they actually talk to one another. It's typically basic demographic information. It needs to expand beyond that so that the integration can be much more robust. And if that doesn't happen, I'm afraid that many operators are going to start building that themselves, which is maybe what needs to happen. Ultimately, that's what we're looking at ourselves so that we can extract the depth of data and manipulate it the way we want it to. But I do see that as a big key is really having this seamless integration. Bob Kramer actually wrote a number of blog posts for Nick around this. I'd highly encourage you to review them because there's really good nuggets of information in there about the need for data integration.
Awesome. Yes. And if you're a technology developer, did you hear that? Data integration. So, well, Brenda, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today. And I just truly enjoyed hearing from you and hearing from your experience and your knowledge and your passion for senior living. How can people get in contact with you? What's the best way?
I believe you have my my LinkedIn information. I'm available on there. You're welcome to reach out. And then our website is up here too if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the Springs Living.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for those who joined us today, I just want to say thank you. It's always a pleasure and honor to have you here in the audience. Thank you so much, Brenda, for being with us today and for sharing the operator experience with our viewers. I really appreciate it. And today's show was brought to you by Fynn.io. And visit Fynn.io to learn about how you can improve your resident well-being, forecast costs, and drive NOI with Fynn's comprehensive senior living platform. That's FYNN.io. And we will see you all back here next week on Tech Tuesday. Thank you.